Hello, all. Hello, everybody. We are glad to have you in today's session, a part of the HIT's meet. So, as you are all aware, today's session is being the unsold. So, as entrepreneurs, as businessmen, and as part of the team, which is promoting any kind of business, the primary agenda for all of us is selling our product or service. That's what drives the business. So basically, coming from the ideation stage where you have an idea or you have a product or a service which you want to promote, and you reach the stage where you have successfully sold it, a lot of people get confused in between what to do, what not to do, and what would be the optimal way to success about selling their product. So we have two eminent panelists today who will guide us through this journey from the ideation stage where you come up with the idea and to the place where you actually successfully sell the product or the service. So we have today with us the two main panelists. We have Samrat, who is an IIM Calcutta alumnus. He's the founder of Natuna Tech, an entity that specializes in B2B sales enterprise technologies for early stage companies, primarily focusing on startups like yourselves. We also have Mr. Ronak, who is the co-founder of Natuna Tech, who is the core sales leader in the company. Gentleman has more than 15 years of experience in international sales for the up and upcoming technologies. So, without further ado, I would let Samrat take over and guide us through this journey over the course of next 1 hour. And I really hope all of you enjoy this session. Over to you, Samrat.
Thank you very much, Abhigyan. Very good afternoon to all of you. And I see some of you have joined from Europe as well. So good morning to them. And as the introduction went, we will dwell on the practical aspects of selling for startups. What I can tell you is that Ronak and I are not consultants. We are actually salespeople who roll our sleeves and work. So you don't expect any jargon-led presentation or heavy slide materials or those kind of gyans. Expect really practical tips on your startups. Okay. So just to tell you before we begin as to what qualifies Ronak and I to give this presentation, both of us have been working for early stage companies. Even when we were working for large multinationals, both of us were lucky enough to have been seconded to startup divisions of those companies, which basically meant we had an early as you say, we got into the startup ecosystem even when we were working for large companies. And for the past 5 years, Ronak and I have been running this venture where we take on sales for early stage companies, and literally from the concept stage to even well-established companies who are in Series A, Series B kind of thing. So both of us, I mean, the idea of this session is not going to be a one-way journey. We have some slides that we have put together, some points, some questions. Feel free to stop. You can put your question in a chat, and after the presentation is over, we'll open it for discussions. You can talk your questions through. Feel free to disagree, and we can then take it forward from there. So I will share my screen, and we'll take it forward from there. Okay, so to give you an idea, who is this relevant for? This is for companies which are in the B2B space, selling technology-enabled offerings. That is what we specialize in. That is what we have been doing all our lives. Now, before we get into it, I'm pretty sure all of us have read a lot about startups. We read a lot of magazines. We are all subscribed to various startup forums. And we know the failure rate of startups is very high. Any idea what is the failure rate? Any idea what would it be? It could be maybe 50%, 60%. Well, as per Investopedia, and I picked up this data from simple Google search, I can tell you the failure rate of startup is as high as 90%. This doesn't include those startups which actually do not even get to the stage of company formation. They remain ideas, they remain partnerships, and then they go there. This is US data, obviously, and the data in India is not very different. Everywhere the data is very similar when it comes to startups. Getting into some more stats, let me tell you, 20% of the startups fail in the year one, 30% fail in the year two, and almost 50% fail in year five. I think, if failure has to happen, startup founders would like to fail early rather than fail late, because that saves a lot of time, money, reputation, and a lot of things for them, and they can then focus on things that really work. So these are the quite, stats which basically say the failure rate of startups is very high. Let's leave it at that. We can have various studies about percentages and all, but then we know we are all entrepreneurs. We like to take risk. After all, risk hai to ishq hai. So we do like to take risk because we believe in the vision, we believe in something that we are trying to do, and we take it forward. Now, coming to why do startups fail? So, okay, they run out of funds. There is a no product market fitment. There are no enough buyers. There are not enough people willing to pay for that particular offering, although they may like it. Various reasons. Finally, the trend that has emerged in the past 10 years in India and even in the Valley is that if you are able to sell, you are able to survive. No matter whatever price points you are able to sell, you will be able to survive because you will be keep raising funds. You may raise your own money. You can put in from here. You can put in from there. You can go for a seed. You can go for an extended seed. You can go for Series A. But as long as you are able to sell, you succeed in most cases. Now the question is, when does selling begin for a startup? Many would answer that, we'll build a prototype, we'll go to the initial set of customers, then we'll go to the early adopters and those kind of things. The reality is that startups that succeed in the B2B space start selling at an ideation stage. Now the thing is, if you look at most founders who are at that stage, are very wary of their idea being stolen. What if somebody picks up and takes it forward much faster than what we could? All those things come in. Many people do not want to go and talk to people. They want to keep it within the founding team and all. That is an utter recipe for disaster. It's a sure shot failure. You have to start selling even before you spend your first penny on anything, long before you even form the company, and maybe sometimes even before you form the core team. You have to start selling to your early potential adapters, the people who are going to begin with you, your potential customers who can be part of the POC itself by starting with that idea. And if you do not even find five of those, then I think you need to really think whether what you're doing is right or not. Now, let's say you've built everything, you've built the POC, you had the first set of customers feel that, okay, it's fine. Now, the question is, now you go it in the market. The question comes, why should anybody not buy from a startup? It's an early company. People like to work with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have this jazz of being entrepreneurs. They are visionaries. They could be the next Naveen Tiwaris of the world. So you basically think of what you want. But the thing is, there are enough reasons for companies not to buy from startups. The biggest one being the risk that comes with it by partnering with a company that's very small. We all know in the technology space, the old adage, nobody got fired for hiring IBM. And that's true even today. But then there have been companies that have been formed because they did something right, which maybe IBM wasn't doing. At the same time, they decided to focus on certain niche. They decided to focus on certain areas which are their strengths. They tried to be unique. Not everybody can be unique. It's a wrong thing to say that you always have to be unique. Not necessarily. But you have to definitely differentiate in some way or the other. And why should anybody buy from a startup? And this is an important question as to who are the companies who buy from startups. One could be companies who may not get the attention from the large existing players in the market. They see value in partnering with a smaller company. That is one. Second could be companies who really feel that you are solving a pain which nobody in the market is solving really, or nobody is really interested in solving that. That's one. The other could be the persona. There is a persona that we have seen that there are customers As in, when I say customers, we are not just talking about companies, we are talking about people within those organizations who like to take the risk and who like to experiment, who like to be the early adopters. Let's understand, risk is not just taken when you are an entrepreneur. Even when you're working, you do take various risks. When you are really taking some decisions which could be risky, could be potential change the status quo in a negative way, can actually lead to the downturn of that person in their professional careers and all. So you have to find those people who are willing to take risks and are willing to experiment and take it forward. The golden rule goes, do not build that cannot be sold. It's a period, it's an old adage. Everybody, we've been through various successful entrepreneurs talking about it. If nobody's going to buy it, it's not going to sell no matter what. So of course, if you do your homework right, if you talk to potential buyers even before you spend your first penny, you are most probably going to get past this hurdle, and you're going to build something which is going to be liked by the market. So always solve a pain that is real. That is real pain, as in that's really a pain that's there, or a perceived pain, which now perceived, I would say, is good if you are mainly in a irrational space, which could be a B2C space. Normally in the B2B space, it has to be a real pain that the customers are facing. Let me take an example of a B2C. I mean, let's take White Hat Junior. They created this perceived pain that, they built on this, what we call the insecurity that parents have for the careers of their future of their children, and created a perceived pain. Now that pain could be real, not real, we don't know really, only time will tell. But they built on it, then they made a story about AI and all those CEOs and Wolf Gupta and those kind of things which are now there and there in the media. So either solve a real pain or create a perceived pain. Perceived pain, I would say, doesn't really go well with B2B space. It goes well with the B2C space, because we all know B2C buying is not very rational. Second thing, once you know something that you're going to solve, you are basically, what's the standard thing that founders do? They form a team. Typically, it will be a domain expert, product expert, some technologist, somebody will come in. What they forget to do, and they normally refrain from doing, is a salesperson. They never hire a salesperson, or rather, they never have a salesperson as part of their core team. Most companies, true, many companies have been successful with just not having a core salesperson or a core sales team. They have taken a hired sales team or built sales team over a period after their Series A and all. But in most cases where failures happen, one of the reasons is there are no salespeople in the organization, in the founding team, in the core team, actually, in the initial stage. It always helps to have somebody who has got some experience of selling or the flair of selling right from the beginning as part of your core team. It just makes matters simple even at the concept stage. So unless and until you treat sales as a core expertise or a core strength, you may not be able to pass that hurdle beyond that. Okay, so be very clear that sales is core. If your business is about selling, if you do not sell, it doesn't pick up. All that we can say will raise funds and all the things, but you need traction. You go to any VCs, after all those jazzy presentation, the question comes: traction, traction, traction. And traction is nothing but paying customers, period. That's it. Now, next point is about what's the most valuable asset that startups have, apart from the idea and the IPs and the team and everything. One is the time. Time is against you. Always you're running out of time, because if you don't move fast, if you're not able to build your initial customers faster, most likely you're going to run out of money, and you may not really get the next round. You may have the money, you might pump in, but you may not have that kind of confidence that you would have initially when you started with the initial seed fund. So the thing is, you have to really be very careful about where you're going to focus your efforts on. Focus your efforts there where you feel the sale can really happen. Be very selective. Just because you got some inquiry on your website doesn't mean that's a real customer. Qualify that. Qualify. We will share with you a checklist that we have made in terms of how you should qualify your potential prospects. But be very specific in terms of the customers that you're going to go after. Just because you got something from a VP from the Reliance Corporation and you fly all the way from Guwahati to Mumbai to meet him or her is not going to really give you that. Well, There are companies who end up selling to large corporations very early in their stage, during their seed stage, during their concept stage, but those are exceptions. Most likely, you will have to sell to the small or the mid segment, assuming you are catering to that segment. If you are catering to the large segment, obviously you have to be ready for the long haul. Deals take sometimes 6 to 10 months, 8 months, 10 months, and sometimes even years. And you need to have that patience. It's okay to get that kind of customer. It's always good to have that kind of customer on your side. So either you have started with that concept selling stage, or you are then having that kind of money to spend to pursue those customers at that point in time. That comes to the next point of buyer profile. Now we looked at the customer profile, the segment, the industry, and those kind of things. Buyer profile or the buyer persona is extremely important to you. You have to understand that people who adopt, who are early adopters, are basically risk takers in the B2B space. Unless you're an iPhone which catches basically it catches the fad or something like that. B2B people are very, very conscious. They are very, very averse to risk. If they take risk, you have to find those people who are willing to take the risk. Go back to their profiles, see if they have engaged with early stage companies, see if they're given chance. And this is not just company specific, it is individual specific. In one large organization, you may still find people who are risk takers and who are not risk takers. If they come from some entrepreneurial background, if they have run successful companies in the past, chances are that they might be more willing to do that. It all depends. So you have to really find the buyer persona is very important. The psychological make of the buyer, the risk-taking ability, the ability to trust entrepreneurs. You sell based on personal credibility. Personal credibility is of utmost importance. Now, how personal credibility? Because a startup, let's face it, doesn't have the product it's needed right now. You are going to build a product journey. Product is a journey. And for a startup, definitely it's a journey, and it's a WIP in making for the first 7-8 years. You are not going to say that, I have a product which is like outstanding product in the market. Unless you already have those 100 customers, you cannot say that. For personal credibility, one, you have to understand that space really well. So basically approach those people whom you really know, who would trust you, or build that trust through your engagement with them, through the first ever call that you make, first your email you send. Build that personal credibility over a period of time, because personal credibility will sell. Your product, companies will be okay for a product that doesn't have all the features that they want, because they know when they're talking to startups, they know that you're not going to get everything in the first go, but you can build for them. You can build for them the way you want it. That is something that you need to go after and work around that. Build an ecosystem. Today, in the past 7-8 years, a lot of startup profiles have come up where you have a lot of things like a NASCOM 10,000. Now, there are workspaces which are meant for startups. There are so many incubators. Being there helps because you are networking in the startup community. Being in the startup community helps each other, and you are able to approach them in a much better way. Rather than picking up the phone and just making calls is not going to help in the early stage. Be very selective. So go in the ecosystem. You'll be able to get a lot of people who that get those startups to try out their services as well. So barter your goods, barter them. Try to see whether you can engage with another startup. Use them. Maybe you don't need it, but help it. Help each other from that point of view. Build those initial set of customers, even if that's not making you profit, but still get those customers from that, because you'll get your initial set of 5 to 10 customers through that network, through that ecosystem, by bartering your service offerings over there. One mistake that many early stage companies do is look small. Now, of course, it's not a crime to look small or be small. Every company always started with 1 or 2 people or 5 people at the most. But looking small is different from being small. Companies will be okay, your customers will be okay if you are small, as long as you try to cover the basics from that point of view. So having simple things, show that you have a different email for customer services, a different email for a sales contact, different email for a HR contact. Have some people, different people sharing different things from the organization, getting some people, your well wishers, and all to share your thoughts on social media or something like that. Don't look small. Don't try to look small. Don't say that we are just 2 people. It's okay to say that, okay to be like that, but say that you have thought of all those things, and it just gives you a good feeling and positioning, especially when you're approaching those prospects whom you don't know. And how do you do that? Thought leadership. Thought leadership comes not from selling, it comes from understanding the pain point, and understanding that pain point and having ways and ideas to solve that pain point. That is where thought leadership will come. You have to look at thought leadership point that point of view. Position yourself as a thought leader. Let's say you have a product for the CFOs. It's a product that's going to be used by the finance department. Understand the finance space more, even better, more than what you understand your product. If you understand that space well, only then you will be able to build a solution that's really going to work and going to solve that problem. So start with thought leadership, get yourself on board from that point of view, create your image over there within your prospective buyers base, share articles, talk to people, go to those forums. I know it costs, forums don't come free, people charge for that. It's okay to charge, okay to be charged, okay to spend that money if you are able to get to the right audience, or at least position yourself as a thought leader. Again, be a problem solver. Do not try to sell your product or an offering. Focus on the problem, focus on how it's solving, how it can be solved, that you know it can be solved, and certainly try to sell your product, sell your offering from that point of view. Thought leaders are people who survive in the long run. Thought leaders are someone who solve problems. Thought leaders are someone who can find solutions to those problems. Social media is free. The list, I don't think we need to really delve too much on it, but leverage it to the most, leverage it to as much as possible. It is free. It is, use it as much as possible from that point of view. We are not experts on social media. There are companies who specialize in that space, but we all know as startups, we always have our challenges in terms of the money, the resources that we have. So be careful about that, but try to use your social media, because this all things work together. It builds thought leadership. It brings that kind of credibility that you need at that point in time. Another point is, many startups go into companies telling them selling the moon. They try to sell that, we can do a complete overall, complete business transformation. Your business will look completely different. All that is fine. It's great to see, but let's understand that people are not going to buy apartment in the first instance. They will buy a room from you. They will buy small rooms from you. They will basically get you to solve very small problems. Enter at that level where you can solve the small problems, get to a foot in the door. That is where you should be. If you position huge business transformation as a startup, chances are that you might fail more than succeed, unless you are like those, you have done that with some for 50 years of experience and all. It's a different matter altogether. But the thing is, when you're starting up, try to get foot in the door with a small thing. Don't try to say that this is the product I'm building and I want to build it like that. You may have to alter your product strategy for the first initial set of customers, and even at a later point in time. Be ready for that. Sell small things. Talk big, but sell small. Make partners in crime. See if your customers who buy into your idea, if they can be your early investors. If not, be open to give out some equities to them if you feel there is value in it. Make them partners in crime. Give them. See, everybody's in it for something. Nobody's coming it just out of charity out there. There are people who are buying from large organizations. They want to make it further in their career growth. They want to give some returns to their shareholders. So make them partners in your crime. If best would be, if you are having a product, going back to the CFO example, if you are having products targeted at the finance department of a company, try to see if you could get some leading figures in the industry as your board of advisors. Don't hesitate to share the pie, because focus on the size of the pie rather than the share of the pie. And that is how they should be, in terms of taking them, making them partners, making them part of your game, and getting them the benefits. Get them to endorse you. Even if they are not board of advisors, even if they are not investors, get your customers to endorse you. And this is extremely important from the early stage. If it's okay to sell something at a loss in the initial days, although VCs prefer something that's at least gross margin profitable. We know all that. But the thing is, barter it for an endorsement, barter it for some kind of a talk that you will be able to do, barter it for a nice video that the customer will be able to do for you after the project is successful. Do it that way. Get them involved, make them part of the success by doing a few things. Last but not the least, never be apologetic. Remember, you're entrepreneurs. You're doing something which maybe top CEOs of the companies and who are board members haven't done that. They haven't taken that kind of risk in life. You are doing that. Don't be arrogant, but don't be apologetic for being a startup. We have seen this with many startup founders, early stage founders being apologetic when they are positioning their offering to their customers. Some of them are really confident, some of them arrogant, and some of them are apologetic. But many startup founders who start very early are like that, and that's something which needs to be completely avoided. So, just a summary in terms of overall, when you're selling, look at the pain, look at those early adopters who would do us, think hard. Why us? Cost of sales worth the reward for them? Would the cost of sales, I mean the cost of selling to say an Reliance Corporation, is it going to be worth the reward I'm going to get? In some cases, yes, as long as I have the ability to sustain that effort, spend money in that effort, spend the effort in that's long sales process. That, think of it. Last but not the least, I'm going to let Ronak speak on this because he has learnt it the hard way. He has basically been running most of the engagements for us. Ronak.
So now the vision has sold. I'll bring you back to reality, right? So I'm 40, touching 40, right? So, and I still do cold calls. I think one of the biggest challenges, and which I see every day. So I sell for, we do about 6 engagements, right? And I sell for 4 or 5 of them as well. At any given point in time, I'm multitasking, right? But one of the things I've never feared, right, and I still don't, is making those hard calls, right? Reaching out to people without the fear of knowing what and how they will take it, right? Especially if it's a very cold effort, right? Most of the initial worry people have is on the fact that will they even respond to you kindly? Will they accept such calls, especially when they are inundated with hundreds of such calls daily, right? So one of the simplest thing, right? If nothing works, right? As a simple plan of action, let's assume you have 15 leads, right? Uh, the normal thing that says is you hold on to those leads as if your life depends on it. I have a counter to that, right? This is the statement here. I learned it from a very learned gentleman in the US, right? I've done good work for him. I've done hard time for him. When I say hard time, it's as good as door to door knocking. I've done door to door knocking as well, right? So every lead you try to lose a lead. Now, what it means by losing a lead, right? Ask all the, so you have the usual NTPCs, right? You try and qualify whether there is a need, whether there is uh, time and all the competition and all money, everything is the usual run of the mill things, right? What I'm also trying to get you to do is, right, and this is at the initial stage of startups. We do a lot, right? So we are currently doing this for an e-commerce startup, right? And it is when you talk to somebody, right? See if you can get him to say no, right? The sooner you get him to say no, the faster you'll get him to say yes. And it's not the same person I'm talking about. The there are a couple of things that works here, right? One is basically you have to have numbers working for you, which means 80 to 100 calls a day leads to a couple of meetings a week, converted into a lead or two a month, which eventually closes, right? Now what I am trying to get most of, and why we have sustained this, we are in the 6th year, and why we have sustained doing this over and over for multiple companies, and that also hard sales, right? So we actually do the selling, so we own the entire sales process. I also have decision making power in some of these organizations, which is very surprising, come to think of it, that I'm not part of that organization, right? So the beauty of that is you try and get your clients to say no, because the sooner you will address that no, the faster you will get them to convert. And that starts all the way from basics, right? When you're first ideating a product, ideating, and this also goes to the VCs. We have done enough VC rounds as well. This goes all across the table, right? Try and see if you can research about the client, see those things which he likes, dislikes, and see how quickly can you find out those areas where he really does not agree with you, right? And then the sooner you address that, the faster you'll get him to convert into a meeting, into a face-to-face, hopefully a sale, right? So yeah, I think we'll throw the floor open, Samrat, right? I think we'll let people speak.
Sure. Floor is
Any
open to questions. Any questions that
questions,
you
guys?
have,
Anything you have
we
in
are
mind?
happy to take.
Anything about sales, pre-sales, inside sales, outside sales, door knocking? I've done everything. Whatever you have in mind, ask.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
So,
Jyoti.
can you walk us through an example of how do you get a client to say no on the journey to yes?
Sure. Very good question. Okay, so I'll run you through an example, right? So, so I'll I'll come back, right? One of the things I've seen is, right. Let's assume there are 5 calls to a sell, right? Let's assume it takes 5 calls, 5 meetings, face to face, web sessions, whatever, right? But depending on the industry you are in, let's assume there are 5 meetings. Most of the time, people have a basic worry: when should you ask? Do you have money in your pocket to buy this? Right? Very simple question. Extremely easy to ask, but extremely painful, right? If you get to that answer where they say that, you know what, I need 6 months. Now, the sooner you can. So normally, I've seen people do this on the fifth and and post that, right? When you're willing to negotiate and all, as you delay it as long as possible, because it's a little hard to digest what they will come back at, right? So let's say, for example, you are quoting $250 a license. What if they don't agree? What if they can only budget 25, right? Now, so the beauty of that is, in my recommendation, after the second call itself, if you are able to probe this, now how do you probe this as well? I mean, I'll give you some examples, but I would recommend within the second and the third call itself, right? You probe this. Now, there are ways and means of doing it. Easily put, you just show your price points on the web meeting, right? See how they react. It's always, you should be able to see it, right? You will visualize their breathing habits, their immediate reaction, the first words that come out of their mouth, and those things will tell you how they respond to it. Most of the times, if it is standard industry practice commercials, they will be nonplussed about it, right? They will be absolutely calm, collected. You'll see nothing. But if you're under, over, or something new happens, right, they do react on it. So these are small cues that come to you. So one of the major things on commercial closing is, the sooner you ask, the sooner you will have time to convert that no. Normally, let's say, for example, his budget is about 100, 150. You are hovering on the 250, 300 range. How can you, what are the various things that you can do now so that you make 150 tenable to you? What can you do now which can, where 150 over a volume, or 150 over, depending on the type of licenses you sell, how does it become valuable to you, and you can close it? And also the other aspect of it, at what stage of the journey you are in when you're going to do this. If you're really early in the stage, I suggest take the 150 and run with it. But if you're at a stage where you have 15, 20 customers, you're say 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line, you funding or no funding, immaterial of that, right? There, I would imagine you take a step back and push back, right? And obviously, you know better how to push back, but these are things which needs to be done really early on. The need, absolutely ask him, do you even see a reason to continue a third meeting? Ask him nicely. Obviously there are ways to ask, but he will give you cues, right? Not just because you have put a calendar meeting doesn't always convert into a closer, right? Am I being helpful, Jyoti? Right?
No, very good, thank you.
So there is one more question coming from Krish Muzumdar. Can you give some suggestions on how to find a team that will work for your startup vision? It's a very relevant question, and I think it's the first question that you should ask once you have an idea. first and foremost, see, when ideas are built, you have to build a team around it. You have to get the team to buy into that idea, buy into that vision. Everybody has to believe in it. If you go by statistics, successful startups are those where the founders have known each other for quite some time. Either they have worked together or they have been friends. Of course, there are exceptions to everything, but typically founders know each other. They have worked together as colleagues in some place or the other. See, try to see that you are able to convince about this idea to friends, but more than friends, try to see if you can convince to potential customers whom you are going to sell it. Let's say you're building an automation product for that's going to be used by the HR function. Try to see if you can get some people from there who know the HR space really well, get them to be either co-founders with you. That's the best thing, and see what complements you. If you are the hardcore techie, then you need somebody who understands the HR space well. You need somebody who is going to do the sales for you. Those are the three things, sales, product, domain. These are three things that you start with. Finance and all can be built later, because you don't really need a CFO till you really reach the Series A kind of stage. Even then, many people manage without a CFO, because these are services which are available in the market. But to be core, you will have to, through your friend network, through your professional network, you'll have to find it. Today, there are many forums where there is something like a co-founder dating kind of a things that have come up both in the Silicon Valley as well as in India, where some of these early stage VCs arrange forums where people can come with ideas, meet some co-founders. They can see who can complement their skills. Now, obviously, it's okay, it might work, but ideally, if you know them really well, it's always better. Any more questions?
Can you walk us through your journey in terms of go to market on behalf of a client? I mean, can you walk us through some scenarios?
Sure.
Okay.
You will take it?
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. So, throw me a product, or where do you see a relevant required? Right? I mean, tell me, where do you want me to do? Which industry? Is it a product? Is it a service?
Let's say it's an advisory service.
Okay, fair enough. Let's take something like us as well, right? I mean, consulting business, anything on the advisory, legal, and all that. So let's look at that. So I think one of the first thing, on assuming they are really new, right? They're in the ideation. They form the team. They have the services ready, or the decks and all the necessities, right? Now, I think there are two. First thing is identifying your clients and the buyer, the whole buying cycle, right? Even before you sell, you see the buying cycle. You have to vision the buying cycle. That in an idealistic world, how the sale will happen, right? And for us, right? So we have also got a client which is actually fairly big as well, right? And very well established, 15-20-year-old, hundreds of employees, and we still do well in that segment, again, and in a services environment, but also in a consulting. Now, it's all about how do you prepare yourself for the journey, right? Now, assuming legal services. Now, the first and foremost I would recommend in a go-to-market scenario is setting up yourself to address those points which are not going to be very comfortable, right? Now, you know what you're good at. You should also know what you're not good at, right? And that's where I emphasize on building the client journey, right? So I think LinkedIn really helps us well in trying to build an idealistic client profile, right? In what is your right buyer, and it's not just about titles, right? Where you just say that, what, if you're selling into a startup, 90% of the time, just pick up the phone and call the CEO, right? It's not just that. It's not as simple, because the CEO, for example, if you let's look at a funded CEO who's just got a funding of $5 million. Yes, he has got money to invest. Has he got money to invest in a consulting service? That alone legal? Again, that may or may not be the right fit at that point in time, primarily because we have seen people not have a legal a division even if they are 200 people old, right? They still try and focus, including HR for that matter, right? They still try and do it themselves because they want to keep an eye on how things are until they reach a size when this is happening. So I think one of the first things on the go to market is a get your positives, but also get those negatives and be very clear about it. That since you have these issues or these shortcomings, which will be addressed over a period of time. Yes, you will grow, you'll get money, you will address those issues. But until that phase happens, you need to be able to at least build an ideal client profile who will at least have a decent discussion where meeting number 1 will become meeting number 2, which will eventually lead to meeting number 3, right? Which is what you would want. So focusing on building the client profile, addressing those questions, finding the right target audience, and then go for it, right? Building the database and all that, which is inside sales then. But even before that is that area, right? Focusing on the client profile buildup.
So there's a question coming from Krish. I would like to hear viewpoints for someone who is willing to start or start up on areas outside of their knowledge or experience. How feasible is that? Good question. Now, let's understand. I'll start with an example. Flipkart wasn't the first e-commerce company in India. There were many more, even many analysts had actually ruled out that e-commerce could be a big thing for them. But they started, of course, they didn't have too much experience. Many companies start outside of their core expertise, but it all depends whether the founders are able to build a team which compensates for them not having that kind of experience. Letting go of your whole thing about control over there, being sure that you are able to listen to somebody who might be much junior in your experience and understanding that space, be willing to do that. But if you look at statistics, people normally succeed in those businesses where they've had some experience. Let me also tell you that one of the things that many VCs will also tell you is that they are open for people with less amount of experience entering into areas where they don't have, like, somebody like a Wow Momos and all. They were formed, people had absolutely youngsters, not much experience. With experience comes a lot of baggage. And that's a fact. It happens with us. We have seen that happening to us as well. It happens to many companies, many individuals with that baggage and all. If you're starting in the new area, have a plan as to how you're going to, you need some people around it who are going to do that. First and foremost, if you are able to validate the problem in that, suppose, I know nothing about, the food industry, but if some problem comes to my mind that could be solved as a user, because we all are users of the food industry, we are all customers of the food industry. If I see a problem over there, you need to talk to some people about, whether that problem really exists and see how you can solve it actually. Some of the things we have to let go from a point of view of that this is not my capability, so I'm going to get people either as co-founders or employees. So that's something which you have to be willing to do that. See, there are ample examples of people who are outside their core area, but these are more exceptions, frankly speaking. And again, one thing I must tell you is that we all get blinded by a lot of media around the startup world. You look at things like TechCrunch, Your Story, these kind of things. The problem with all these things is that we get to hear only success stories. We hear only success stories. We don't hear failure stories. In fact, I feel there is actually a space for somebody to create some kind of a medium around failures of startups, and that should actually, you learn more from it than just success stories of listening to
I was telling Samrat recently as well, right? I just see too many good posts on my LinkedIn, man. It's just too many good posts, right? And sometimes you just feel that the whole world is against you, right? It's not. I don't think. And adding to that point on the teammate, right? We also hire, and we have got good people, right? People who have been with us for 4.5, 5 years. They have not come from traditional sales background, and they're young. So the point of being young and not coming from the industry you are in, right? The expertise you are in. I think we ourselves can actually throw a couple of examples of people who have come from marketing, who have come from, I think, BPO, who had no doing front end sales, right, which is basically end to end, and we do end to end, basically POs, invoicing, everything, right, getting the money out of the customer, everything, whatever it takes, kind of thing, right. We have seen good people who have come with varied industry, varied. I think Samrat will also agree. Only thing you need is the zest, right? You need to be able to prove if you're coming from. So a lot of people going from traditional IIM background to agri-tech, right? I think that the people here will also agree on those things as well. Is people moving to agri-tech? I'm sure they're not farmers in general, but you learn how to do it. Only thing is, I think if you have good vision and zest and the willingness to learn and adapt your style to that, right, I think you will do really well. Even only thing is, age sometimes comes into matter if you're old to change, if you're kind of resistant to change. But I've seen to the counter as well. We have seen good people at senior age is also doing really well in other industries, right? So I think yeah.
See, the whole thing is believe in what you have. You have to first believe in it, and you have to get people to believe it. Remember, you believing in it is not going to create a business for you. People have to believe in what you're going to do, which means you have to be able to get those co-founders, you have to be able to get those employees, and you have to be able to get, most importantly, the customers to believe in what you're doing. So, next question is on.
I think Aso was asking.
Okay. See, I'll tell you in terms of LinkedIn, right? I'll tell you one thing about LinkedIn. LinkedIn can be it has to be used very carefully. You need to be on LinkedIn. There's absolutely no doubt about that, because first thing people do when you make a cold call or write to somebody, they look at your LinkedIn profile these days. So first and foremost, have a good LinkedIn profile, and it doesn't cost much to have a good LinkedIn profile. Actually, there are companies who offer that as a service where they would create good profiles for you in terms of how you want to position yourself. And these are not costly, and as a startup founder, you should be able to spend that kind of money on it. But let's say, okay, you're doing it on your own, which is again fine. But the thing is, be active on LinkedIn in the relevant forums. Coming back to, let's say, the HR example, let's say you have a product for the HR industry. Network with those guys, network with them, start adding. As I said, I'll go back to that slide which I mentioned: pain area, thought leadership, and solution to that pain area. These are the three things. First and foremost, understanding that there is a pain in a particular area is the first step in any direction. If you are able to relate to those HR heads of those organizations and they associate you with the pain area, and then you are able to throw thought leadership around it, that is what is going to help you. LinkedIn, by sending messages and adding people and selling to them, that is not the best thing. What I hate as a person who's on LinkedIn is somebody sends you an invite and the next you have is a message about how great company I am and how great offering I have. That is something which I would never like to have. I mean, what you need to do is, let's say you add 50 people who are your potential prospects, potential customers, let's say. You add them on LinkedIn, join their groups, try to position something, maybe some article on that. Try to have a debate around it. Try to have some kind of a thing. You will get inputs and you get perspectives. Sharing links of your demos and those kind of things are not the thing that you should do right in the beginning. Once you have established some kind of thought leadership in that space with your people, with your prospects, that is when you can go about throwing things about what your product does and how you're doing that. Have a LinkedIn premium account, all that is fine, but be careful as to what you're going to position over there, because that is more important. And so we're not expert. I'm not an expert on LinkedIn or something, because there are companies who specialize in that. But I don't think you have to really go there. But even if you have to, it's not really going to cost you much. But main thing I would say, connect with those founders, thought leadership, bring that in, understand the pain area, and give the solution. Okay, I think we have 8 more minutes. Any more questions?
I just wanted to understand your drill a little better. So, I heard Ronak say that, you do 80 to 10 outbounds. You set up 1 or 2 calls a day. maybe, and then 1 or 2 meetings a week, and then just walk me through that a little more detail, and how does it work, and how do you source it?
The data I think the data we source the hard way, right? I think and the numbers are correct. I mean, I think what we try and do is we try and build a database so that we can hit about 80 calls a day. So in general terms as well, one of the things I have, and I think Samrat will also agree, we have learned is anything and everything can go wrong, but what will consistently help is your numbers, right? And not your sales numbers, is the effort you put on sales, right? Why we advise, and why we have been advised, and why they have been advised who advised us to do 80 calls is this: there is a certain philosophy, right? 80 to 100 calls normally leads to about 10 to 15 connects, right? On a good day. On a bad day, it could be zero, right? We have seen zero for 2 to 3 weeks as well, right? So I've seen everything to see, but normally 80 to 100 calls tries to be around the funnel area of you having a decent 2-minute, 1-minute conversation where you at least throw in your elevator pitch to about 10 guys. Now, out of that, max I have seen, maybe 5, maybe 3, right? That converts into minute 2. Every minute is important. Okay, so the way I create pitches is, right? I create pitches for every minute you speak. I physically do it for every client, right? And I've done it for hundreds of them. Every salesperson who comes to me, right? Every minute needs to be justified on a call. You're taking somebody else's time. Time is money, which means you need to justify for that money. So the first 30 seconds is your elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is exactly what it says. Elevator pitch, right? You meet somebody in an elevator, what will you say? Then the moment he responds, yes, I like something, what, can you piss off? I don't like you, or whatever it is, right? What is your counter to those things? 99% of the time, this never happens unless the person has a bad day. And we have seen those people as well. 99% of the time, people are courteous to give you another minute. And that's where you either win it or lose it, right? Is what are your next things? How much research have you done on him so that you understand what he needs, but you don't sell to him, right? You are never selling on a cold call. What you're trying to do is you're trying to build a bridge which was non-existent, right? You're trying to only, when I create a pitch, I create up to 5 minutes, right? And there are good people who now, including myself, I did take a lot of time to get to this, but I've done calls where I've done up to 4 or 5 minutes of discussion on an absolute blanker cold call, right? Which takes a bit of an effort, because you need material, you need enough depth, you need to have fallen enough times to have woken up to be able to answer those questions which comes out of the blue, right? How will this fit in? I've got a SAP ecosystem. How will this tag into my SAP HANA, whatever, right? Any type of curveball that comes in. So I think where we spend a lot of time is that 80 calls, which leads to maybe 5 good connects, that leads to and then those 5 good connects will probably give you 1 or 2 second level presentation, which is what you would want, right? Your WebEx presentation happening in the week, and assume there are 6 or 7 done in a month. About 2 or 3 convert into a proposal, right? So there is no magic number. You could do 150, you can do 20, but what we have seen is when you do 150, you're still on the same boat as 80, and when you do 20, you're just not there at all, right? You will never hit your numbers. So how do you get data for it? I think I heard you, if I heard you right? So you were also asking about how do we get data. I think you give it a month before you start sales, which also gives you time to learn the pitch, learn the elevator pitch, do the things and all, right? That is assuming you have a sales team. But if you are the founder, and if you are the salesperson, and if you are the person who's going to do, you do not have the luxury of doing this. For you, these things don't matter. Ideally, if a founder is selling, these numbers are absolutely bonkers to you, because every minute is for you is selling. You are selling 24/7. I mean, every day day in, day out, you're selling, right? That's all you do, right? But if you have a sales team, you can build such an emphasis for them, right? This is what you do. If you have a junior sales guy, if you have an inside sales, you have a pre-sales, and how the ecosystem is formed. But where if you are a founder and you yourself are doing it, I think from get go, the day you have ideated, like Samrat said, getting those right, trustworthy. They may be your clients, they may be your buyers, they may be your advisors, right? That is the first start of selling, right? You start selling to your parents, you start selling to your wife, you start selling to your kids as to why you're not going to be coming home, why you're canceling holidays. You are selling 24/7. But the numbers for salespeople, I think we are very fixated on the fact that they need to make 80, 100 calls, right? And it does work wonder.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We are towards the end of the session. So thanks a lot for joining, and hope these inputs were helpful. Happy to answer. You can contact us anytime through our website, or you can contact the organizers of this session. And stay safe. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much for these valued insights, Samrat and Ronak. Personally, I completely agree with the fact that if you can sell your product, no matter how trivial it is, people will definitely still buy, right? I remember
you sell it to your wife, you sell it to anybody. If you can't sell it to your wife and kids or your parents, from whoever you're taking money off and time off, you can't sell shit. Sorry. I mean, the first thing starts at home, right? They need to be invested in this.
Yes. Coming from a Bengali family, convincing my parents to get into entrepreneurship itself was a big challenge. I completely agree with you, Ronak.
Right? I'm a Tamilian, man. I am a Tamilian. We're only supposed to do jobs, man. Tell me about it. I've never seen, no one in my family has ever done this. I'm in my 6th year. My father still sometimes reminisces. You were doing this. You were raking in the pounds and the dollars and all. Hey, Samrat used to do this. Well, I mean, you reminisce on old days, man. But it is what it is, right? It is fun, right? We love it, right? Every moment of it.
Exactly. It's the passion that makes the difference. Yeah. So this reminds me of a story that I came across, that in 1975 there was this American person named Gary Dahl who sold close to, I think, more than $1 million worth of basic rock, like a stone called petrock. I mean, he managed to sell it even though it had no intrinsic value whatsoever, right? I mean, and people bought it like it was hot candy at that point of time, right? So on the other hand, there's a company called BP, right, which brought something useful in the market, like second-hand cars, sale and resale of second-hand cars, which was heavily funded, but it ultimately could not make it even after 4 years worth of operation, just because they couldn't do good sales and marketing, right, as you said, right? So we at Hackstrap and C Marketplace hope all of you, all the attendees of this session found this session useful and can use the sales tactics suggested by Samrat and Ronak in order to leverage a dynamic sales output for all your companies and startups, whatever you're engaged with. As Samrat suggested, even if it takes time, focus on the right sales strategies, as even Ronak said, which will ensure the idea that is something worth, which is widely recognized and appreciated by your entire customer base. Just like, Bitcoin is being celebrated today, right? I mean, even 4 months back, it was worth less than $12,000 per Bitcoin. Currently, it is touching 35,000. It even went to 40,000 2 weeks back. Speaking of Bitcoin, we also invite each and every one of you to join us next Saturday on an engaging session on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, which will shed some light on how an asset without any intrinsic value, just like the petro, is rivaling gold in its prices, or how by leveraging, say, blockchain technology, you can make the technology of your startup more robust and obviously more cost effective, right? Finally, thank you, Samrat, Ronak, for guiding us through the sales lifecycle process, which we'll use at Hackstrap as well. Definitely for promoting more events like this. Thank you. We will take personal tips on the matter, right? Thank you, Aso and Sandeep, for making this session possible. But most importantly, thank you, all of you attendees, especially the ones who asked these questions and got out the most of Samrat and Ronak's discussions in today's session for the benefit of everybody. Have a great weekend, everyone, and hope to see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.